In this yin yoga sequence, we're going to work on hamstrings, hips, neck, and shoulders. Hello and welcome to my mat. I'm Andrea, and in this yin yoga sequence, we're going to be just kind of covering a lot of the different parts of the body, hips and neck and hamstrings. So sit back and relax and enjoy the ride. I always love yin yoga. I love how it's so grounding. I have the option to use a couple of yoga blocks, a blanket, and a yoga strap. If you don't have a strap, you can just get a belt, a dog leash, a scarf, anything that you can use to wrap around your foot and help extend your reach. Yoga blanket to sit on, and blocks if you need to use to prop up, and I'll show you all of those as we go along. We're going to start in a wide-legged forward fold, and if that's not comfortable for you, you can do one leg at a time, and I'll cue you at the half point to switch sides. So in wide-legged forward fold, if you have really tight hamstrings, the first thing I would suggest would be to prop yourself up on something. If you need to pause the video and go get a couch cushion or some yoga blocks, prop yourself up a little bit. Otherwise, we'll come to a wide-legged forward fold. And that can be however wide or narrow you need it to be for you. We all have very different flexibility and hip structure, so you choose what works best for you. If you need to bring your legs closer together, that's fine. You can prop yourself up. Another option is to take a blanket or a towel, and if you want to do just one leg at a time, put a little bend in your knee. So to start with both legs, we're going to just breathe up nice and tall and walk ourselves into a fold. If you would like to do just one leg at a time, choose a leg and maybe prop up this bent knee with something and fold over that extended leg. And I'll cue you when to switch sides if you're doing only one leg at a time. So we'll start by just breathing up nice and tall. And then as you're ready, on an exhale, you can just walk your hands forward a little bit. And as with all yin, don't come fully into the stretch. Just start on an intensity of 1 to 10. Come to about a 5. Just respect feeling the stretch and noticing the sensation, but there should be no pain or discomfort. If it feels like it's too much of a stretch, back off. And over time, you can just very gently and gradually go further into the stretch. So depending on your flexibility level here, there are a lot of different things you can do. This applies to whether you have both legs out or just one at a time. One thing that I like to do is put yoga blocks out and just rest on those. Rest my forearms. And continue to just breathe at your own rate. And as you hold this pose, if you feel a release in your muscles, if you feel like you can go deeper gradually, the exhale is the place to do that. If you'd like to try that, just go ahead and take a big inhale, maybe lift up slightly as you breathe in. And then on the exhale, go ahead and just let yourself sink slightly deeper into that pose. And again, don't go too deep. Go to the point where you can still breathe into it. And one thing I've also noticed is that if I have my palms down, whether it's on blocks or on the floor, I unconsciously think about pressing myself back up. So I've noticed that by putting my palms up, I tend to not feel that urge to press myself away as much. So you can try that wherever you're at. Maybe take your palms up. And take a few deep breaths. You're welcome to close your eyes if you'd like to. And if you are doing just one leg at a time, now's the time to switch. So very gently come to seated and straighten out the leg that was bent. And bend the opposite leg and switch to the opposite side from here. And just notice what this feels like. Really notice the sensation of grounding all of your legs and your sit bones into the mat, into the ground. Maybe can come down a little bit lower if that's comfortable for you. Just very gently let gravity bring you down only to the point where you can still breathe into the stretch. If you find your thoughts wandering, just bring your focus back to your breath. Just pay attention to what that feels like. Pay attention to rooting your legs and your sit bones into the mat. And before we come out of this pose, I'll ask you to just take 3 really deep breaths and focus on your ribs. Focus on what it feels like as you breathe in and out. Notice your ribs expanding and contracting. And as you're ready, if you have your palms up, go ahead and take your palms down. And then very gently use your hands and your arms to slowly push yourself back up. And whether you had one leg bent or both, go ahead and at this point just come into butterfly pose. Bring both soles of your feet together. Both knees out wide. If you need to prop yoga blocks up underneath your knees or rolled up towels, whatever. We're not going to stay here for long, but we're just kind of going to settle in here. Maybe do whatever motion you feel like you need to do right now that feels good. Maybe some hip circles. Or if you'd like to, maybe just a little bit of swaying your hips back and forth. On our next pose, we're going to do some neck stretching. And again, if you'd take a moment and find a spot where you can just sit comfortably. I like to prop myself up a little bit when I'm seated like this, so I'm going to just take a blanket and tuck it underneath just my tailbone and sit bones. Raise my hips up just slightly. It helps me sit up straighter with a more neutral spine. And take a deep breath in. So for these neck stretches, go ahead and dip your chin. We'll do a little bit of a neck roll. Bring your right ear to your right shoulder. Dip your chin again towards your chest. And then left ear to left shoulder. And then come back to neutral. And as with all of these yin poses, you're welcome to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. It's entirely optional. So now dip your right ear towards your right shoulder. And very gently, if you'd like to, you can take your right hand on your head and don't pull it down. Just the weight of your hand on your head will add a little bit of traction. And there's several things you can do with your left hand here. So you're welcome to just keep your left hand right here on your lap. Or you can take that left hand out towards the side and then play with having that left thumb up or thumb down. It might change the stretch out a little bit. I notice that with my thumb down, it takes the stretch a little bit further out towards my shoulder. It's different for everyone. See what feels good for you. And one more option is to take that left hand and bend that elbow and wrap it around behind your back. When you find a spot that's comfortable, where you just feel a nice stretch, not too much. If it becomes too much, take that hand off of your head. Try to come to a place of stillness. Keep in mind on that scale of 1 to 10, we want to feel the stretch at an intensity of about 5. And then just notice your breath here. Notice the sensation of the stretch in the side of your neck and down towards your shoulder. Maybe a slight lift up as you breathe in. Sinking a little bit down as you breathe out. And we'll stay here for about 30 more seconds. Take 2 deep, full breaths. And then wherever your left arm was, go ahead and bring it back into your lap. Use your right hand to just very gently bring your neck back up to neutral. Lower that shoulder. We'll do a few shoulder rolls right here. Roll front and then roll to the back before we come to the other side. If you'd like to take a moment and just do a couple of those half circle neck rolls here, go ahead. And then meet me back at center and we'll come to the other side. So breathe up nice and tall and then bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. And it might feel very different side to side. That's totally normal. If it feels okay to you, you can take your left hand and very gently place it on top of your head. Don't pull it down forcefully. Just the weight of your hand is enough. And then play with different arm positions with that right arm. So you can keep it right here on your lap. You can take that arm out towards the side. Play with thumb up or thumb down. Or you can bend that elbow and bring your hand behind your low back. Find a spot that works for you. Might be the same or different than the opposite side. And once you settle in, just try to come to a place of stillness. Pay attention to your breath. We'll take 2 deep breaths together here before we come out of this pose. So complete inhale. Full exhale, press all the air out. 1 more. And then release that right arm, bring it back to your lap, and then gently use your left hand to bring your head back up. And again from here, if you need to do some very gentle half circles with your neck, go ahead. Notice what your neck feels like now, if it feels any different than before. Maybe do some shoulder rolls if that feels good. From here, we're going to come into a pigeon pose, and I'm going to show you the lying down on your back alternative first. If you have any knee issues, I would advise this version. And if you already have pigeon pose in your yoga practice, go ahead and get into it. But I'm going to show you the lying down version first. You can use a strap if you need to. Lying down with both soles of your feet to the mat, you'll take one leg up, that ankle over, and then we're going to bring this raised shin and calf towards you. You can reach your hands through here and hold behind your thighs or your calf. Or you can take a strap and wrap around your shin and use that to pull it towards you. The goal here is to feel a stretch in the outside of the hip and maybe into the glute muscles of the leg that's raised up. If you don't have any knee issues and you'd like to try the lying down version of this, go ahead and bring one foot in front of you like you were going to cross your legs, and then take your other leg around and behind you. And what we're going to do here, and I really advise you to use props on this, definitely use a blanket or yoga block, is to come up with this front knee bent and your foot on the front leg aiming back towards your opposite hip. I like to put a yoga block right underneath this thigh, right under my rear end. Helps prop me up. You're going to have to play with what feels best for you. If you'd like to, you can just bring a blanket right there, prop underneath that thigh. If you have any knee pain at all, put more of a bend in this front knee and bring this front ankle further back. So find a spot here where you might feel a stretch in the outside of this front leg and into the rear, and then maybe a stretch on the front, the hip flexor area of the leg that's behind you. Make sure that on the leg that's behind you, the top of your foot is to the ground. And you're welcome to just stay right here, pressed upwards. Or if you'd like to, you can bring your forearms down onto yoga blocks. Play with what feels good to you. If you're really flexible, you can bring your forearms all the way down to the mat. Take a moment to play with this and see what feels good to you. Find a spot where you feel like you can come to stillness. If you have any knee pain at all, come out of this and lie down on your back and do that version first. And while you're in this pose, if you're face down, check your shoulders and make sure that your shoulders aren't scrunched up by your ears. Try to lower your shoulder blades down your back and create some space between your shoulders and your ears. You can close your eyes if it's comfortable for you. Another option is to put your forehead on a block. Rest your neck and your head. And then just bring your focus to your breath. Pay attention to your inhales and your exhales. If you find a lot of tension in that hip of the leg that's in front, on an exhale, just try to consciously let that tension go, let that stiffness go. Try to be still, but if you need to make adjustments, if you need to prop up that front leg more, please do so. If you find your mind wandering, just keep coming back to your breath. And we'll take 2 deep breaths together before we come out of this and switch to the other side. Pay attention to your ribs and your collarbones. Notice what they feel like as you inhale fully. Completely press all the air out. One more full breath in and out. If you're down on your forearms, go ahead and use your hands to press back up. If you're on your back, you can stay there and take both feet back to the mat and maybe sway your knees side to side. If you're face down, go ahead and swing that back leg back around to the front. And we'll take our knees up towards the ceiling, both soles of your feet to the mat. And just do a few little windshield wipers. Sway both knees to the right, both to the left. And notice your hips right now. whichever position you're in, just notice how one hip might feel very different from the other. And we're going to switch to the opposite side. So have a blanket or yoga blocks nearby that you can use to prop up with. If you're lying down, this time you will lift up the other leg and cross it over the thigh and then pull that towards you. Otherwise, if you're going to be face down, have one leg in front of you as if you're going to have your leg crossed. Take that opposite leg, reach it around behind you. And then go ahead and use a blanket or a yoga block or a pillow and prop up under the thigh of this front leg. And then bring this foot back a little bit. If it's comfortable, you can bring that leg forward, but make sure that you don't have any torsion or rotation in your knee. To protect your knee joint, I would recommend bringing this leg further back. And then your back leg, the top of that foot is going to come to the mat. You're welcome to stay right here, raised up. Or bring your forearm down to blocks. Or all the way down. If you'd like to, you can prop up your head here. I like propping my head up because then I have no tension in my neck or head trying to hold it up. And then bring your attention to your shoulders. Make sure your shoulders have no tension and that they're not rising up towards your ears. Create some space between your ears and shoulders. Make any last-minute adjustments that you need to make before you can come to a place of stillness. And as you settle in, again, just come to your breath. Notice what that feels like. Pay attention to the hip of the leg that is bent in front. Or if you're lying on your back, it's going to be the leg that's bent further up towards the ceiling. If you find a lot of tension and stiffness and tightness in that hip, with every exhale, just try to let that go. Use the exhales to just sink a little bit deeper into the pose. And again, if you're face down and you have any knee pain at all in that front knee, please turn around and switch onto your back. And take that version of pigeon instead to protect your knee joint. And before we end this pose, I'll ask you to just bring your focus and your attention back to your breath. We'll take 2 deep breaths together. Just pay attention to what that feels like. Your ribs expanding as you bring your air in. Full exhale. And once more, big breath in. Press all the air out. If your forehead is resting on a block, go ahead and take that out. And wherever you're at, use your hands to press yourself back up. If you're face forward, go ahead and bring that other leg back up. If you're lying on your back, you can just stay there. Just bring both soles of your feet to the mat. Then take your feet wide towards the edges of the mat. And again, windshield wiper both knees to the right, both knees to the left. Take notice of what your hips feel like now. Do they feel a little bit more even now that we've done both sides of that? And we're going to come to seated. So if you're lying down on your back, go ahead and roll over onto one side or the other and use your hands to push yourself back up to seated. And we'll end with a shoulder stretch. So again, if you would like to prop yourself up on a blanket or a pillow or a bolster, lift your hips up a little bit. It's easier to sit this way. Come to a spot where you're comfortable seated. And we'll end with a shoulder stretch to open up across our upper back, loosen up our shoulder blades. And there's a couple of different versions of this that I'm happy to show you, and you pick which feels best for you. You can do one arm at a time, or you can do both arms at the same time. So to start with, take your left arm across your chest and then use your right hand to pull that towards you. So you're going to pull your upper left arm towards your chest and notice an opening across your left shoulder blade. Another option is to take both elbows on top of each other with your left arm on top and then just give yourself a shoulder hug. A couple options here. Whichever way you do this, both arms at once or just one at a time, just notice that pulling open, the stretching open of your shoulder blades and your upper back. You're welcome to close your eyes if it's comfortable, and just, we're going to be here for about a minute. Take some deep breaths. Just focus on your breath and focus on noticing what your upper back and your shoulder blades feel like in this pose. Be sure to sit up tall. Make sure you're not slouching in your spine. We'll finish this side by taking 2 huge breaths together. And as you do that, really pay attention to what your upper back and your shoulder blades feel like when you have them in this position. So full inhale in. Notice your shoulder blades spreading apart from each other. Full exhale. One more breath in. Press all the air out. And then release your hands. And then maybe do a couple little small half circle neck rolls before we come to the other side. So if you only did one arm at a time, this time go ahead and take your right arm in front of you. Use your left hand to bring that right above the elbow. Pull that towards your chest. Otherwise, this time have the right arm on top, cross at the elbows, and reach around and grab both shoulders. Sit up tall. Notice the stretch across your upper back. Maybe your shoulder blades pulling apart from each other. And lower your shoulders down so that they're not squished up by your ears. Bring your focus to your breath. Notice what that feels like. Sitting up tall, we'll take 2 deep breaths together. Again, really pay attention to what your breath feels like with your shoulder blades in this stretch. Full inhale in, full exhale. Your last breath in. Press all the air out. And then release your hands. Maybe do some neck rolls or some shoulder rolls. And hopefully you've noticed a little bit of release of tension in your hips and your shoulders and neck. And I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for meeting me on my mat. Namaste.